Hi everyone, welcome back to the series on how to build your information security management system in Jira and Confluence. Today we will be looking at doing risk assessments and we will be using the PASTA framework for that. PASTA stands for Process for Attack, Simulation and Threat Analysis. And as you can see here, it has these 7 steps to it. So let me tell you a little bit more about each step and let me bring some examples, and then we will go into Jira, look at basically the tickets that I have prepared already, and we will model all of this then in Confluence so that you can follow it visually. So the PASTA framework in the stage 1 says that we need to define objectives. And so I would define the objective for this case that I want to present is a business and security goal. For example, let's say maintaining email availability and confidentiality. So then we need to define the technical scope. And so the technical scope could be that basically the users, endpoints, and the email system and the laptops should be taken into the scope. We need to decompose the application. And so basically we need to identify data flows and assets that are part of the scope. For us, that would mean, for example, email data, user credentials, and laptops. In the step 4, we analyze the threats. And so the threats I would define as phishing and credential theft. So basically here we are looking at the threat register and vulnerability register that we have built in the last session. And this is already where we have the tickets, right? In the stage 3, that's where we actually used our asset register. And so in the stage 5 now, when we do the vulnerability analysis, we look basically at what are the different vulnerabilities associated with each of the threats. So for example, weak passwords, user unawareness, or some weak policies maybe. And in the stage 6, we look at the attack analysis. So we can basically kind of narrate how does an attacker behave, what is the path of the attack. For example, an attacker sends a phishing email, there is then a credential theft, and the mailbox is then accessed. And as the last step, what we do is the risk and impact analysis. And so basically this is where we then have our risk register where everything then ties into. And here we also then kind of apply the controls to it, the mitigations, and we discuss how do we prevent this threat from happening. So I know all of this is very, let's say, theoretical. Let's jump right into our Jira. Let's look at the tickets, and then let's look how all of this ties in one diagram that I'm going to build. If you're interested in the PASTA framework, I will link down below also some more information about PASTA, how does it work, how to work in the framework. There are also some other methods that you can use. I wouldn't say PASTA is the easiest one, but it's definitely the way where kind of, the process can be mapped out really well, and you can kind of look at the different processes that you are running, and for each you can map out the potential attack scenarios and the different vulnerabilities assessments. So enough talking, let's look at the risk register where I've created here these 2 tickets. Let's look at the phishing email. And so the phishing email could lead to credential compromise. I've already connected it here with our additional work items, for example, email system and then user accounts. So we have actually, this is a primary asset, this is a secondary asset, right, for us. And here we have the threat of a phishing attack. And I've done the same also for our risk analysis, also connected our work items in here. And now let's go actually into Confluence. And so in Confluence, what I like to do is create a whiteboard and then work in a whiteboard, because then we can visualize everything much better. Okay, so let's start right away with the first item. Basically, why are we doing all of this? Let's define the objective. And so the objective would be email availability and confidentiality. So this is our objective, right? Now the scope we can also define right in here. We can add here a ticket. And so let's look for these three assets. Let's import them right in here. And so actually all three assets are tied into this thread register. So now that we have defined what is in scope, now let's add our threats to it. So we have the device loss, credential theft, and phishing attack. Let's import these here as well. And there could be, multiple of these threats tied to, let's say, one of the assets. So for example, for the email system, right, we have the credential theft, but also we will have here the phishing attack. For company laptops, there could be device loss. Maybe instead of having, you can do it actually in straight lines so that it's clear where is it pointing. And let's improve this one as well. Perfect. And let's say for user accounts, we have the credential theft, and it's also tied right in here. Perfect. Now let's talk about the vulnerabilities. For us, they're assigned to each of the threads, right? But here we can, for example, simulate or talk about the different attack processes. We can have here different attack scenarios, so let's add them. For example, there could be that attacker sends phishing emails, right? Perfect. Another one could be that attacker brute forces or reuses stolen passwords. And maybe let's add one more. And let's call this one loss of encrypted device. Although maybe it could be interesting to actually have this as unencrypted device, since then we can mitigate actually also this problem of unencrypted devices. Let's connect these. Credential theft, we can put it right in here and this right in here. But again, these attack scenarios, they can concern, multiple of these processes. So for example, credential theft can actually also relate to attacker sending a phishing email, right? And now that we have actually mapped the attack simulations and described the attack simulations, we can also tie it directly to the risks. So let's also add some risks in here. So we had the loss of laptop, and phishing emails could lead to credential theft. And so we have here the loss of laptop that will tie right in here. Reuse and brute force of passwords, that will lead right in here, as well as this will lead right in here. And now what we can also do is, think about, how can we actually, mitigate all of this? What could be our mitigation strategies? What can we use? So for example, we can do, let's say, security awareness training. Also, we can enforce multi-factor authentication for better passwords, right? And finally, we can also encrypt endpoint devices, which can mitigate different risks in here. And we can again tie these like mitigation strategies to the different risk tickets. I'll also add this here. Perfect. And of course, we can also think about how does all of this tie to which of the ISO controls does this tie. So for example, I would say the Annex 5 information security policies, this will tie to probably Annex 8, also some parts of the asset management And we are also talking about all these passwords, so that will relate to access control, right? So we can also map this directly to the ISO and align it directly with the ISO. And I mean, this is just a short example, right? But as you can see, we've modeled basically the whole thing, and we understand what relates to what and how is it all interconnected. If you want to, you could also create, let's say, additional project where you would store all of these like attack scenarios. So you can also add them to, you know, different, because this kind of maps out only, let's say, the process for email availability and confidentiality. In case you want to use it also for something else, I would suggest you put these tickets here that stand for the attack scenarios. You put them also into tickets, and then you can reuse them there. And the same applies also to these mitigations and controls that you can also store as mitigations and controls in a separate project. And then you can again reuse it and tie them to different scenarios, to different risks, and to different risk assessments. So this is all from my side today. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, any comments, please put them down below in the comments, or use the link and schedule a call with me. I would be happy to help you build your own risk register, talk to you about risk assessment, give you more information about what is needed for the ISO certification, how to prepare for it, and, you know, any tips and tricks. So use the opportunity. Thank you very much for listening, and see you next time. Bye-bye.